So right away, so she did some hip internal rotation on that trail leg. So by lowering her contralaterally, it totally changed the opposite effect of what this hip now has to do. Notice like her right leg internal rotation, she loads that up contralateral, and it's got a fire. You know, totally different. Good. How are we doing with hip mobility? Have we covered hip mobility? Alright, so hips. Usually we'll do straight leg, bent leg. Alright? Bent leg variations. Okay, we can go single joint or we can go multi-joint in the sense of what we're finding is that the glutes are extremely weak with about 90% of the people that are going to walk in the gym, no matter who they are. A weak glute causes back pain, causes knee pain, manifests itself all the way up the body. You got to get the glutes stronger. Right? So the first place we're going to start with somebody, we're going to start them supine, we're going to start them from the floor. Alright? And we're just going to ask them to extend their hip. If they're a true beginner, we're just going to go double leg down. We're going to see, can they get their knee in line with their ankle, pull their toes back. Because right away, tight lateral hamstring people are going to externally rotate the feet. So we're going to cue them toes in, whether we got to put our hands there, and we want them to point their toes as hard as they can towards their foreheads. We're going to give them the use of their hands at first, and the ability to push down. And from here, we got to get them to understand glutes in conjunction with your core. You know, because what they're used to doing is faulty compensatory patterns around the hip. They want to flex while without the use of their core. So what we have to get them to understand is glutes tight, core tight, and get up into that bridge position. The first place we're going to go with this is a 30-second hold. We're going to have them squeeze their glute, and can they create a straight line? Knee, hip, shoulder, ear, with the use of their hands. What are their feet doing? Can we get them to stay back? Once they can hold this for 30 seconds, like a real beginner, we're going to go 3 30-second holds. And just get them to understand the proprioception there, and the stability aspect, and the core and fire with the glute. It's like what Barry was talking about with that 10-minute squat to change stretch pattern. Alright? Once they get good enough, then we're going to start adding reps. We might add 8 reps, 10 reps, 12 reps. Once we get that extension that we're looking for, we're going to simply have them take away their hands, and we're going to have them flex the leg. Okay? Because now we get a component of isometric hip flexion while the opposite side is getting hip extension. Okay? One way that we'll teach this too, and I don't have a tennis ball, but if you can imagine, I'd put a tennis ball right in their TFL psoas region, and I'd have them squeeze as hard as they can. And they have to hold the ball. This is real easy. If they don't hold the ball, if psoas or TFL aren't strong enough, they're not going to be able to hold the ball, and the ball will fall out. Does that make sense? So we're going to have them squeeze, hold, and single leg has to look exactly the same as double leg in the sense of notice the hip extension. Right? It's got to be that bridge action. Think about what the word means. You know what I mean? From there, we're going to simply elevate the torso. So I'll go up on this bench here. And again, I'm going to use range of motion as my friend again. Right? Now all I simply do is I'll probably start with single leg. Because if we get to this point, we're probably not going to go double leg down. You know, we're probably going to start right. That's because they're good enough in single leg that I'm going to start here. Elevate the torso, rest the shoulders right against the pad, and now I'm going to take advantage of that increase in range. They have to travel their hip all the way to the floor and then come up back into that intercession position. What you're going to get a lot of here, though, is compensatory pattern. They have to use the glute and not their lumbar spine. They have to use the hip extension. We look at it as a single joint exercise, almost like a bicep curl for glute max. Because we need them to squeeze, and the glute is the muscle that is controlling the eccentric phase. And then again, the glute is riding in the concentric phase. What a great exercise for someone with back pain does. Because it prevents, there's no spinal pressure at all. There's no load to the spine. And the external rotator has to really fire and work as a stabilizing while the glute mass is working as well. Alright? So, we start with double leg down, we'll start with 30-second counts, we'll go 8, 10, 12, and then we'll go into our single leg hip extension from there with an elevated torso. From there, we'll actually take hands, and if you can imagine, so like I have 2 kettlebells, and we actually wrap one of those small super bands around here, put it on our hip, and that's the way we load that out. Alright? The final thing we're going to do is we're going to take it from a static exercise and create a dynamic component. So, the first thing we do is grab one of those big physio balls. The smaller the ball gets, the harder it's going to be. The bigger the ball, the easier. Okay? And all we're going to simply do, we now know in our minds, this is like 6-8 weeks of working with somebody, that their hips are strong enough to stabilize hip extension. Alright? And now we're going to ask the hamstring to come into play and do part of its 3-joint function, which is stabilize the hips and extension, flex, extend, and knees. Alright? So, we'll use the physio ball, but I don't have one, so I'll show you what the outside is. But all the same idea, we're going to do eccentric stuff first, and then we're going to make it more of a continuous flow. Alright? So we're going to start from here, we're going to start from long, we're going to go hands down, we're going to drive the hips up, then they stabilize hip extension. Sorry, we're going to start them bent, start them extended, and then we're going to ask for 5 counts. 4, 3, 2, 1, have them drop, and pull back in. Same idea, then they stabilize hip extension, then we're going to have them eccentrically decelerate. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, drop. If there's any type of hip dropping, weak glute, and 2 things are going to happen. 1, the rep doesn't count. 2, they're going to cramp in the hamstring. Alright? And then it's a very simple way to progress this. Go here, 4, 3, 2, 1, then they're going to pull back in with their glutes on the center. Right? 3, 2, 1, pull back in while their hips stay extended. Again, no dropping. Very, very strict with that exercise. And if you think about why our athletes yell and pull a hamstring, pop a hamstring, because they have to use, remember that the glute is your primary hip extension, right? So when we go into a lot of high-low strength, the hamstring has no idea what to do. Because we're used to leg curl machines. Remember, in a leg curl machine, you don't get the use of your glute in conjunction with your hamstring. Right? Here, again, stability in the hip, assisting in extension as the hamstring auxiliary function. That's exactly what running is in. You know, the ability to extend the hip muscle. So if you have an athlete, this is a huge component. If you have somebody with back pain, huge component. Because they're probably just compensating by using the lumbar because they can't use the glutes hamstring. Alright? Let's start very simple. Let's just start in bridging. So, toes back. Use your hands and just work on squeezing your core as you drive the hips up. And pause and hold. So we're going to go toes back. Guys, the reason the toes are down, the reason the toes are up and forward and not down, if they're down, you have the ability to use the quads to a greater degree. But I want the hip extensions to work. So, good guys, and then from there, just do a set of 8. Go up, pause. But again, you're the one using your glutes to decelerate. And if you feel advanced, take your hands out of the picture, off the floor, across the chest. And now notice the instability component. Perfect. The other thing, guys, like we're doing way more, I just want to make it clear, we're doing way more hip dominant stuff than we are knee dominant stuff. Because bottom line, 90% of people are just weak in their hips. And when they use machines, they don't get the actual rotator component. They don't get the instability component. When you're here, even when we go single leg, you now have to use glute medius to prevent internal rotation. So try it. Notice how the outside part of your hip is firing through regulatory flow. So, Once you feel good, once you feel you can get extension through your hip and now you're on front. Grab the mat, extend your arms. The other thing here is start top down. Some people will tell you to start from the bottom and then just go across. I'm not having good success with that, that's just me. Start from the top, let your arms cross. Right? Two things you're going to want to happen. You're going to want to push in your shoulders, you're going to want to push in your feet. But again, squeeze the hip. Make sure the hip is the decelerator accelerator. Right? Good job. Try not to spread out. Do 6 and realize the difference from right leg to left. And this is fun too, like if you get somebody who can't get their glute to the fire, start poking at your hip. Now obviously be careful here. Now you don't want to poke at the hip, but I guess if you're not a freak, it's alright. But poke the hip. Because if the hip's not working, it needs some sort of proprioceptor, you know? Or RNC. That's pretty darn good. Yep.